Hello and welcome to this fifth unit, the last unit in this fourth section, the economic valuation of ecosystem services and natural capital. So in this case, in this unit, we will focus on some international initiatives promoting the economic valuation of natural capital. Starting with the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, which is an initiative promoted by United Nations the beginning of the 21st century. They invited countries to perform evaluations of the state of their ecosystems in two different phases. In the first phase, what they suggested was to perform biophysical evaluation. In the second one, they suggested to perform economic evaluation. So this webpage, the webpage of the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, it has very interesting reports on the way to do this sort of valuations, and it also collects the results that some of the countries, United Nations countries, have produced and then sent back to this website for its publication. IPBES or IPBES is another interesting web page. IPBES stands for Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Ecosystems and Ecosystem Services. And it is an intergovernmental platform. It's not part of the United Nations, but it's linked in some way to the United Nations, since the United Nations provides its secretariat. So it's probably the most visible body of research and interlink with governments related to biodiversity and ecosystem services. It produces reports, very striking reports, related to the state of biodiversity and urging for action to governments. They work with valuation of natural capital, but they don't like to use the term ecosystem service. They have promoted the use of a different term, namely nature's contributions to people, which is the term for which the different countries with different sensitivities in the world they reached a consensus. So the SIA initiative, the System of Environmental Economic Accounting, this is the SIA is not new. The System of Environmental Economic Accounting is the part of the United Nations Statistical Office suggesting the accounting on the state of nature, of ecosystems. But in 2021, they changed the approach to do this sort of accounting, and they started promoting the idea of accounting the value of ecosystems. So they have turned into the economic valuation of natural capital. And we are talking about United Nations, so I would say stay tuned to this initiative, because probably it will be the most important one in changing the way in which we take into account ecosystems, impacts on ecosystems, natural capital, and the value of natural capital. Very likely this will push governments, countries to assess the state of natural capital around the world using economic valuation techniques. So this is, I would say, among the top 5 initiatives in the world right now. So very important as well, of course, the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals, with a lot of goals and with a lot of indicators. And one of the most important points regarding what we are seeing right now is that SDG 15 includes as one of its goals the accounting of the impacts on natural capital. But most of the indicators in the SDGs are related to sustainability and the state of ecosystems anyway. So focusing on the World Bank also has some initiatives. The most important is WAVES, Wealth Accounting and the Evaluation of Ecosystem Services. The World Bank has been worried for years, for decades I would say, about the impact of large infrastructures. So the World Bank was one of the first institutions to suggest before giving funds for large infrastructures, to calculate the impact on nature, the impact on natural capital. And this wealth accounting and evaluation of ecosystem services initiatives is a huge step forward in that direction. It suggests economic valuation of the impacts on natural capital with different methodologies and with different examples in the web page. Very interesting to review. The TIB initiative is, I have not mentioned it in the first place, but it's probably one of the top 5 as well. And if it's not in the first place of this list, it's because of the fact that the TIB initiative was especially active between 2007 and 2011. So now it's not so active, even though there are some lines related to agriculture that are still active. But what they did back in 2007, promoted by the German government, the European Commission, and then later by the United Nations Environmental Programme, what they did is to provide reports on the importance to do economic valuation of natural capital, how to do it, the difficulties to do it, some guidelines for governments, for private firms. They even produced a database of original studies that were useful for benefit transfer. So it was a huge initiative, very active for some time and very important so far. Even today it's very influential. So something to take into account, and the reports they have in their website are still very interesting. They are not out of date at all. Another initiative, another group of initiatives comes from the European Union. No doubt the European Union is the most active body today promoting the taking into account of the value of natural capital in decision taking. So I would say most of its instruments today we can see some reference to natural capital, biodiversity, ecosystem services, very different initiatives, but all of them are very sensitive to this idea, and in some way or other they are promoting the calculation and the consideration of impacts on natural capital. For instance, there's a whole set of instruments relating to the mapping of Europe's ecosystems. So in this web page, it's probably a good starting point, but browsing over the internet with the MAES program, the Mapping and Assessment of Ecosystem Services, which has been active for almost 10 years now. We can see reports, we can see databases, we can see maps related with more or less detail depending on the country, depending on ecosystem services, but maps related to the presence of ecosystem services and the value of ecosystem services as well. The Business and Biodiversity Initiative is oriented towards firms, so what they want to do is to create common standards and common platform to exchange experiences between the European Commission and firms, so private firms, especially related to the measurement of impacts on biodiversity, and I would say that the improvements in the way in which firms are behaving has been huge in the last years, and it has become a reference point, a reference site for firms to take into account what the European Union, what the European Commission is promoting regarding biodiversity. The European Investment Bank is also active. They have promoted a line of financing facility called Natural Capital Financing Facility, which of course is related to projects that take into account the value of natural capital and try to minimize impacts on natural capital. Then we have the Maya initiative, Mapping and Assessment for Integrated Ecosystem Accounting, with, by the way, different reports, country fact sheets for many European countries already. And then we might talk a little bit about private initiative. And if we talk about private initiative, the first starting point should be the Capitals Coalition. The Capitals Coalition is the result of the merge of two initiatives, the Natural Capital Coalition and the Social Capital Coalition, so now they work together. So they have started by defining a natural capital protocol. The natural capital protocol is a commitment to take into account the value of natural capital in decision making. The website of the Capitals Coalition presents this natural capital protocol and also presents the firms, the institutions that are active today in pursuing the achievements in this natural capital protocol. They have also reports, best practices, guidelines. They have references to the activity of many firms around the world. And of course, we also have an ISO standard, which is not very well known, the ISO standard 14008. So it's in the family of the 14,000. This ISO standard is related to the way in which monetary evaluation of environmental impacts should be done, related to the evaluation of ecosystem services and of course the impact on those ecosystem services and natural capital. So as you can see, the presence of these instruments oriented towards the economic valuation of natural capital is huge, is deep, and it's increasing from the public sector as well as from the private sector. We will have more of this soon and with increasing presence in our lives.